The connection between Adolf Hitler and the United States is indirect, uncomfortable, and a little unsettling, more about influence, money, and ideas than friendship or alliance. First, there was American inspiration. Early Nazi racial laws didn't come from thin air. Hitler and Nazi legal scholars studied U.S. race laws, especially Jim Crow segregation and anti-miscegenation laws. When Germany drafted the Nuremberg Laws, 1935, American racial legislation was discussed as a real-world example of how a modern state could legally enforce racial hierarchy. The Nazis actually thought some U.S. rules were too extreme, which is a deeply grim historical irony. Second, American money and industry. Before the U.S. entered World War II in 1941, several large American corporations had business ties with Germany. Ford Motor Company operated factories in Germany. Hitler openly admired Henry Ford. General Motors, via Opel, was a major vehicle producer for Germany. IBM, through its German subsidiary, provided punch card machines used for census and data processing, later repurposed by the Nazi state. These were business relationships, not ideological alliances, but money has a way of blurring moral boundaries. Third, Henry Ford himself. Ford published anti-Semitic writings in the 1920s. Hitler referenced Ford positively in Mein Kampf and even kept a portrait of him. In 1938, Ford received a Nazi medal before the war, when diplomatic lines were still open. Fourth, the U.S. as an enemy. Once America entered the war, Hitler viewed the U.S. as a dangerous hybrid, massive industrial power plus democratic culture. He underestimated how fast the U.S. could turn factories into war machines, one of his biggest strategic miscalculations. Finally, after the war, the connection didn't end in 1945. The U.S. ran Operation Paperclip, secretly bringing former Nazi scientists, most famously Wernher von Braun, to America to work on rockets and weapons during the Cold War. This wasn't about Hitler, but it shows how practical interests overrode moral clarity once again. So Hitler wasn't connected to the U.S. as an ally. The link was ideological influence, economic entanglement, mutual observation, and later, conflict. History here isn't clean. It's tangled, human, and uncomfortable, which is exactly why it matters to examine it closely.